plenty, tick, a tick, a tick, a tick, a tick. And it's like, well, most children babbling is ba, 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 ma, 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 ba, ba, ma, ma. And so that tick, a tick, a tick, a tick is very important information for a pediatrician to have if it's not, again, following that developmental trajectory. So especially families that have other children or who have been around other children, they can identify those things as being a little bit more peculiar a lot quicker than a family who it might be their firstborn or their first
so it might be a little more to detect on your first child because you've never had a child grow up and see what I guess normal behaviors would be versus something that might be different. So this is very important stuff, you guys. If you've got a child like this or you know somebody, have a family or friend that may be going through this, please kind of share this information along with them. This is all very helpful stuff. Again, you can check out Diana's company, hopegroupaz.com. So that's kind of the detection and giving that information to your pediatrician. Or did you say a behavioral pediatrician?
They have developmental
pediatricians. Okay, so now you've gone in and you spoke with the pediatrician and you've kind of determined, okay, yeah, we may have an issue here. Now, we were talking about the family training, right? What does that consist of? You know, you guys talk about they come to the doctor and they work with a specialist once or twice, 3 times a week. So that's 2-3 hours out of a full entire week, 7 days, 24 hours a day. I would guess that the more important, crucial part is the elements at home that the parents and even probably some of the siblings are helping reinforce. Talk a little bit about what tools you equip the parents with to take home in the house.
Absolutely. The most important component of treatment of children with any neurological disorder is that the whole family is on the same page and on board. And so generally what we recommend is that the family go through an intensive training program, which it can look very different for every family. But the state of Arizona offers one. It's a 2-year program. The families are able to have consultants come out and work with their child, and then therapists come out and work side by side with them as well. But making sure that it's kind of a take-home point of you really don't turn off this disability, and therefore you can't turn off the treatment. We can come in and recommend your child to have 25 hours a week of therapy, but that's only a portion of your child's day. It's super important that as a family and siblings and anybody interacting, grandparents, anybody interacting with the child is able to follow the same treatment protocols as to not interfere with kind of the learning and development that we're working on.
So 2 years, right? And so we were talking before the show, is that covered by insurance? So I've got normal health insurance, and we find this out about my child is most insurance companies step up and say, hey, we're going to help you and cover the treatment that we need, or are there some gaps in there? And you'd mentioned the Stevens Law and the Arizona state mandates. Talk a little bit about that so parents know what some of the resources are that are there.
Yeah, so over the last 6 years, we have had a state mandate in place that has required insurance companies to fund behavior analysis or behavior analytic services for children with autism. There was a lot of loopholes that insurance companies were able to work through. One of the predominant loopholes was where their plan was underwritten. So if their plan was underwritten in another state, then they were kind of exempt from Stevens Law. Not fun. But we're at a point now where we've got, I want to say it's 35 to 36 states right now that have insurance mandates. So even if their plan wasn't in Arizona, the likelihood of it being in a state that has its own mandate is high, and they do have to follow those mandates.
And so if you're concerned about the cost of this, and obviously our family's welfare is number one, but for families who are on a limited income, and don't be so concerned about this. There's ways that you can find out how to get these funded through different insurance companies and programs. Again, I keep encouraging you to go to the hopegroupaz.com. You can get any of that information there. Reach out to some of their specialists there. Kind of talk about what it takes to get the ball rolling. What are some of these services that should be covered? How long are they covered? You mentioned 2 years is kind of right off the bat. What happens after those 2 years? The insurance company says, okay, how does that work?
It really depends. We do have the ability to request extensions. The early intervention program funded through the Medicaid plan, it's through the Division of Developmental Disabilities. That one we're able to extend until they're in first grade, and predominantly because it's early intervention, and after they're in first grade, it's no longer early intervention, and so they're setting up some new programs for children as they age out of that program to go into some of the others. But the insurance companies, for the most part, we aren't seeing a lot of caps on when services are no longer provided.
Good.
But I do want to say the biggest thing we run into is that families do kind of get used to us being in the home. And, for the most part, our services are really time sensitive in that our goal is to work our way out of a job, work our way out of the house. And to do that, we've got to train the families and get the children to where they need to be.
Wow, that's awesome, you guys. Man, it's such a serious topic, but it's so awesome to hear that there's so many outlets out there and things that you can help. And, we're going to take a short break here in a minute, but we're going to come back and we're going to get it really, really close to the heart and to the chest with Diana and her family. And this has always been her passion, her line of work. And her firstborn child actually has some symptoms of this. So it's not only her profession, it's her personal life at home. We're going to talk about the intricacies of that and how to balance that at home. Thanks for listening to Lifeness. Stay tuned. I'm here with the best mortgage guy in Arizona, Kelly McCurdy, talking about the truths and myths and short sales and foreclosures. Kelly, tell our listeners some good news.
Hey, Logan, we're so excited to announce that we can provide a client with an FHA mortgage 3 years after a foreclosure, 3 years after a short sale. And for our VA clients that probably served our country, we can provide them with a mortgage 2 years after a short sale and 2 years after a foreclosure.
Wow, that's awesome. Give Kelly McCurdy a call, 602-615-4881. Again, 602-615-4881 to find out how, and tell him Logan sent you. Hit it. I like that one. That's a good jam right there. All right. We are back with Diana Wilson with Hope Group AZ. The first two portions of the show, we were kind of talking about early detection, some of the signals and symptoms you look for. In the last segment, we were kind of talking about the insurance side of it and what's covered, and more so training the parents in the home to apply these principles when you're not there with the prescribed time and counseling that the kids will need. And again, this is very near and dear to our heart, and this is why Lifeness touches you guys out there as listeners, because Diana does have a child who has some of these symptoms, and we're going to let her kind of share a little bit about that as far as this is what she's always known and done as a work and a profession and her passion, and then all of a sudden she's a mom. Tell us kind of how that's gone for you.
It is very interesting. One of the things you would have never thought of in being in this career is that it would happen to you. This is my 10th year in my career as behavior analyst. 6 years certified, and then I've been with my company for 10 years. And my son is 4. And so when he was born and, he had his 10 fingers, his 10 toes.
Just like we're hoping that they come out with. Okay, we're good there. All right, we check that box, okay.
Kind of looked like my father-in-law, so it was a little creepy at first, but once I got through that, I was good.
Uncle Donnie, rest in peace. God bless you.
Absolutely. He started actually at 4 months old having seizures, and that was kind of a big turning point for us because, I always joked like, oh, give me a child with a neurological disability. I can do this. And then here's my child having grand mal seizures.
At 4 months. I remember when that first started. So when that first happened, did your education and your professional side kick in, or was it more apparent like,
I was mom.
See, right? That's what.
I was definitely mom. I was the crazy mom screaming in the emergency room, running up and down the hall. I was mom.
And how could you not be? I don't care how long you've been doing this as your profession. That's your kid.
Exactly. And that was, and we had some encouragement from the pediatricians or the ER doctor who was adamant that kids just do funny things, that whatever we saw at home was probably just funny. I didn't find it very funny. So of course I turned into Beowulf mom. But after that, he actually had a seizure in the emergency room, and the doctor said, this is very unusual. We don't see a lot of kids with seizures like this. And they were pretty kind of positive on his outcome because seizures don't usually have a lot of regression and other delays that necessarily are associated with them in isolation. So we had our ups and downs. He was reaching, 12 to 14 seizures a day, finally got medication under control. And then at 9 months old, he had a large seizure that ended up kind of putting him back to square one. He quit setting up. He quit rolling over. He quit supporting himself. He quit babbling. He quit smiling at us. I mean, we lost everything. So we had to take him in and say, what's up? Yep. And fortunately, the knowledge that I did have at that point, because I do, work in the field, was to just push early intervention and worry about what it is, as we go along and get through the wait list with all the various doctors, and just push the state early intervention services, which if your child's under 3, so long as there's a developmental delay, they will come out to your house and evaluate them and get them services. So we pushed through all the medical appointments. And definitely he was diagnosed at risk for autism. It was determined that he does have a genetic disorder or a genetic deletion that may be attributing to some of his symptoms, but we went right into a 2-year intensive training program.
And it's helped.
Oh, definitely. He's very, there's some small things that obviously I can tell, some things that now that we have little sister that dad can look at and be like, why is he doing that? Because little sister doesn't do those things. But for the most part, outside of us really knowing him, you can't tell him different from us.
And I remember when I came over when he was real young and this was kind of going on and he was just learning to sit up and kind of do those things. And the last few times I've seen him, he's a regular kid.
Yeah.
He's absolutely a regular kid. Now I want to kind of talk about the dynamic of husband and wife / wife or mom and dad / mom, wife / professional at this.
Yeah.
How did that dynamic go when Brandon's saying, hey, this, and he's dad, right? You're both co-parents.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I care how good you are at what you do. It's a 50-50 road. How was that dynamic as parents trying to deal with this with one another, saying, I think we should do this or we should do this? How did that play out?
I was very fortunate. I am very fortunate that my husband is a hands-on dad, and we sat down, we talked about it, and I said, I need you to learn the system. I need you to talk with the school and do his IEP and work with the therapist. One, because I didn't want any of the conflict, but 2, because I needed him to know it and hear it from somebody that wasn't me.
Absolutely.
We had to balance those 2 pieces, and there are still times to this day where I have to bite my tongue and remember he is dad. He gets a choice on some of the parenting stuff. Most of the time he does ask for advice, so he is very good about that. But I've got to also look at our marriage too, because that's just as important.
Absolutely.
For the kids.
If you and anytime you face a challenge like this as parents between husband and wife, you still got to keep that relationship the priority, because without that being solid, there's no way that the two of you can 100% competently help your children develop. And I think that this is an important point in this, is that this is real life application now for you. I got to say, I thought you were really good at what you did before. Now you are absolutely an expert in this, and I think that the knowledge that you bring to the table in some of these programs that you're trying to implement, because it's not a physical thing where you can do a blood test or something and check improvements and cell counts and this and that. There's really no dead set scientific way to measure improvements or regressions or things like this. But I think the fact that not only is this what you do, I'm not going to say 9 to 5 because I know you work more than that, but we'll call it Monday through Friday, and then on nights and weekends you're a mom.
Yeah, and it is very hard to separate the two and not let myself get down on, or hard on myself for not implementing things that I go in and tell families they should implement. And there's a level of burnout that comes with any working family, regardless of whether you work in this field and then have to go home to it, or you work, at Kohl's and you have to then go home and it's not your typical raising of your child. And, my heart goes out to the families with the older children who have autism, because, you kind of look forward to that point where they're 13 and you don't have to pay for childcare anymore because they can get a house key and go in and make their mac and cheese after school. And you can, come home to them eating potato chips, but you didn't have to pay, and they're happy and you're happy. And this is a lifelong, disorder that affects the families. And it's something that, I don't think we provide enough support for the older children.
I think that's it. And I don't know too much about it, but I just know insurance and doctors, and just like when you took your kid into the ER the first time, doctors, what are they there to do? To tell you there's nothing wrong with you and get you out of there so they've got room for the next person. But that's not the way it should be, you guys. And I think that that's the key takeaway as parents involved in a situation like this, is that pay attention and don't just overlook it, that, oh, they're young and this and that. And again, I haven't been through it. You have. I would assume that most of the time some of the signals and symptoms are pretty apparent, but maybe sometimes they're not.
Yeah, sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's very hidden, and just if you have that gut feeling, get it checked out. Worst case, they tell you no. You have that feeling again 6 months later.